conversation that we're having. I just want to put a couple of things out there so y'all know. If you would like to like communicate through the chat, or if you had like any questions or like need specific specific clarification on anything that we're talking about, there will be a section where like after the speakers speak their piece, there will be Q&A, so there's space for that. But also too, if you just need some like clarification, maybe when people are talking and having the conversations, you can put that in the chat, and me and Yasmin will get to you as soon as possible. So with that being said, I'm just gonna kind of break down the jot of like what's going on and some of the things we'll be talking about and introducing our special guest. So you guys just heard from Josephine Gray. Shout out to Auntie Joe. Josephine is from the St. Jamestown Community Co-op, St. Jamestown Community, and Oasis and Oasis South. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Auntie Joe, but maybe would you like to talk a little bit just about your background and doing those type of works? Very briefly.
Well, I've been at it for a good 30 years. I raised my kids here, and I'm half Jamaican, half British, and my children are also Indigenous African Canadian from the East Coast. But yeah, we've been building this co-op since 2015, based on a food project that we were trying to pull together to make sure that newcomers could have access to healthy food. And Ezeki is one of our board members and has been a wonderful volunteer with our Bulk Food Buying Club. And our Bulk Food Buying Club is our active project right now that allows us to source and choose healthy foods to bring to our community as we pool our buying power. And African Food Basket is one of the sources where we like to get the fresh fruits and vegetables. They help to put together to meet the dietary needs of people of African descent. I think Ezeki is going to speak first.
Yes, and Ezeki, I'm gonna just give you a little intro, and then you can tell the people a little background about yourself, if that's all right.
Okay.
Ezeki, and correct me if you're wrong to pronounce your last name, Huey. Is this correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Ezeki Huey is a farmer, also a member of the Crew Women's Club and St. Jamestown Community Co-op. I've never met you before, so it's nice to meet you.
Same here.
Yeah, and maybe you can speak a little bit about your work and yourself and what you do.
Okay. I am Ezekiel. I am from Jamaica. I came here 2008 as an immigrant with my 3 children. I reside in Hanover, that's the northwestern side of Jamaica. I do farming. I believe in the ownership of land, because with land you have independence in how you eat, in how you think, and in how you live. So I'm here living in St. Jamestown now since 2017. I have been with the co-op just since last year, 2020, but I've always been concerned about the lack of access to my kind of food, so to speak. Yes, and the pricing and the quality. So it's very important for me to play a part in what is happening, and also to create a link with Oasis South and Oasis North.
Thank you very much, Ezeki. It's nice to meet you.
Same here.
And the next person I'm gonna introduce, I'm gonna give you a little intro. Zakaya Tafari. Zakaya Tafari is from the Black Food Toronto, and he is also coordinated the African Food Basket. Zakaya, would you like to speak about yourself and a little bit of the work that you do?
Hey, thanks for having me. So yeah, I with the African Food Basket, I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of that when we get into it. Pretty much my dad's the one who started the Food Basket, so I've been around this for over 25 years. In the last 3 years, I've gotten more involved in actually running part of the organization. And as a result of COVID, we launched the Black Food Toronto program as a way to increase food access to members of the African Caribbean Black community who are impacted by food insecurity and COVID-19.
Thank you very much, and it's nice to meet you, yo. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna move to the first speaker. We just introduced everybody, and we're gonna have the speakers talk a little bit about their work, the stuff that they do, etc., etc. And the first person would be Aziki. So you take it away.
Okay. Evening, everyone. Hope everyone is having a nice afternoon. Well, I'm a mother of 3 children. I'm a farmer, as I said, but my work is basically to create a connection between the land, not having land, and our health. Yes. We as African people in the diaspora have been afflicted by certain diseases. And those diseases are normally, we own those diseases, not understanding that we should not own those diseases. Those diseases were inherited because of colonialism and because of slavery. So my work as a mother of 3 children, coming from Kingston, going to live in Hanover, was to be able to show how in owning land, how we can take back our health, or we can be in control of what we consume and how we consume it. So my aim is to be able to show or to give access to ones who want to own land in Jamaica, because land is there in abundance. There's land there that all you need to do is to find out how many taxes is owed on the land. There is a lot of island land in Jamaica, and I would love to be that bridge between Canada and Jamaica. Because how I came to this is that I came to Canada in 2008, and I saw that there was no life here. There was no way, as a vegetarian, as a vegan, as a Rastafarian, I was going to flourish here if I don't have land. So I decided to go home within a year and 3 months. I did not stay. I took my children and I made the bold move. I did not know where I was going to live. I did not have nowhere to live. But I left Canada December 31st, 2009, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, and I went home. And I've been going home ever since. And I'm on 4 acres of land. I don't own the land, but I'm able to farm the land and I'm able to live on the land. And every 6 months, I make it a point of duty. Not now, not since recently with Corona. Everything has changed since Corona. But what I have shown once is that it's possible. You have land there for just 40,000 Canadian. That's all it takes. 40,000 Canadian. You can pay lease on land that is less than 1,000 Canadian a year. There's land there. And we need to create a connection between the Caribbean and here that is sustainable. And that has always been my aim, to be able to share that, to carry ones to Jamaica, to include them in the farming process, to let them understand how important it is in owning land or in our farming land, to be able to take back your health, to be able to get rid of the diabetes and the high blood pressure. We don't need to carry those diseases. We don't need to live in despair because we do not have access to land to plant food. And if we don't get access, then we are going to always be in this situation where we are not able to access the right food, the proper food, and the food that we need to be able to heal ourselves. And that is my 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ziki. And I just want to point one thing out, something that I didn't mention. Excuse me. After the speakers speak their piece and stuff like that, we're gonna leave a 5 to 7 minute slot for people to do a little Q&A. So if you guys have any questions for Ziki, this is the time now. It's gonna say let's go to about 2:25 or 2:26. If you have any questions or anything like that, this is your opportunity to ask her. So, and I thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aziki, you mentioned that there's an organization down there. Like one of the things that we've been thinking about in St. Jamestown Co-op and with the Oasis Project is how can we create a way to be bringing healthy tropical produce into the community for people from the global south and for people of African descent. And when you and I spoke a bit about what's going on with farming in Jamaica, you mentioned there was an organization we might want to talk to.
Yes, Farm Up Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Farm Up Jamaica. They actually they actually come from North America. It's actually volunteers from the United States that they actually come and work in accordance with primary schools. They come and work in accordance with the school system in the rural area and with farmers to give them better farming practices in organic growing, and to also to give them the avenue to collect the heirloom seeds, because we're losing our heirloom seeds to GMO seeds. And because what is happening that whenever Jamaica is tied to a system of globalization, and it's tied into a system where for you to get aid, they give you poison seeds under the pretense that it's going to give you more yield, not understanding that you're actually getting rid of your heirloom seeds. So that's one of the benefits of me living in Hanover, because living in Hanover, I am being able to connect with the indigenous plants, and I'm able to collect seeds. So I have this friend, he lives in Portland. So he has this organization where he actually collects heirloom seeds, where we're able to keep our heirloom seeds and we pass it around to farmers. And it's also connected through Farm Up Jamaica.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That's so important. Thank you so much. I should mention too that when I've gone down there a number of times to a community called a Kampong, and when I was, it's a Maroon community, which is independent indigenous people of African descent on the island of Jamaica. And they pointed out that a number of the trees and foods that are grown popularly in Jamaica actually were brought originally from Africa. So it was really interesting learning for me. Thank you so much, Zuki. Is there anybody else who had a question there? Okay.
I was actually gonna ask a question. Like you're saying like in Jamaica, you know, and like being able to like farm and stuff and have your foods and all that type of stuff, and like moving to St. Jamestown, you realize that the quality and the quantities of like and not being able to have access to these type of things, you know, like how does that make you feel, like, you know, as a person like moves into the community and, you know?
Okay. It's hard. I have to be able to train my mind not to focus on the food that I have left back home.
Understood.
90% of my diet has been totally depleted once I'm here. I focus only around beans because I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat, so
understood.
I'm limited.
Yes.
So, and I have to compensate my vegetables with whatever is of this region, which is kale. I have to, substitute callaloo for kale. I have to trust what is coming from off the shelves of supermarket, which I'm not used to. I'm used to going to an open air market.
Yeah.
And I'm used to connecting with the farmers, and I'm used to actually getting food from my own hands.
Exactly.
So not being able to get food from my own hands, it leaves me in a situation where I am actually frustrated, and I've always been frustrated about it. And it's kind of a little bit debilitating in a sense. I know that there's access to certain West Indian stores, but look at the prices.
Yeah.
Look at the prices. So I have to train myself and my children. We limit our eating to a certain set of food while we're here, and that is why we look forward to going home when we can get to go home, because I plant in a rotational sense.
Understood.
So because I plant in a rotational sense, I can prepare to go home at certain times of the year and know that
Mhm.
I'm going to have a yield,
Yes.
and that yield is going to carry me through until a particular time. And not being able to do that, yes, and not being able to have access to it,
Mhm.
and not understanding where my food is coming from, or not being able to even have a patch of land to do
Mhm.
something. Yes, it's frustrating.
All right. I appreciate you for expressing that too. And the reason why I asked the question is because, me growing up in Bleecker all my life, St. Jamestown, it's one of the most diverse communities, and it's so multicultural. And like with that being said, it's super important that like the people who move into our communities, wherever they're coming from, are able to like have access and like have spaces so they could carry out and like, the ways that
Yes,
they eat, have availability and access to like stuff that's good for you, that's healthy.
yes,
Because
yes,
we think about like just speaking from me, like my own experience, like we just think about food as okay, yeah, I'm hungry, so I'm gonna eat food, but we don't realize like, when people say you are what you eat,
mm-hmm,
yeah, it's so crucial and it's so important. Like you wouldn't want to have like a health crisis, and then
yes,
So
yes.
thank you for answering that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And with that being said, oops. With that being said, we're gonna move on to the next speaker, which will be Sakaya Tafari.
Hello, hi, thanks for having me. I'm gonna try to share my screen for a second. A little presentation here. Okay. This one. 1 second here.
While Zakai's looking for his screen, I'm just going to give you a little tiny story. I've known Zakai's dad since I was 20, and it's really exciting to see him all grown man and doing all the wonderful work he's doing and joining us today. So I'm personally very thrilled about it. I just wanted you to know.
Sorry, I didn't know there was some security. All right, are you guys able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the African Food Basket actually celebrated 25 years last year. It's an organization my father started 25 years ago to address the same topic we're talking about right now, which is food insecurity, food sovereignty. And I'll be very honest, I was young at the point when this started, and I didn't really completely understand the importance of it because it was just a lifestyle for me. But over time, I definitely gained more of an understanding, and that's why I'm part of the work right now. So as it says here, our mission is to provide leadership in urban agriculture and foster collaboration to advance food justice, health, and social enterprise in the African Canadian community. And this is work my dad's been doing for 25 years. I've been observing it. But definitely as I've gotten older, I've really understood the importance of it, and COVID has really sort of taken it to a next level. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the history and then tell y'all what we're up to now. So we started 25 years ago with a food buying club, which pretty much focused on addressing some of what Ezekiel had mentioned in terms of making sure that folks of Caribbean descent and African descent were able to get culturally sensitive food through what we call the food buying club. So pretty much harvesting the ability to purchase in bulk wholesale, which allowed us to, one, buy higher qualities of food, and then pass on those savings. So as you see in the images here, we would package them up, and with the help of volunteers, be able to deliver them straight to people. Some of the other work that we did off of this was we started to work with the city, Toronto Community Housing, and a number of community partners to do what's called community food animation, which allowed us to build capacity within community by developing and supporting community food projects. So community garden markets. As a result of the community gardens, we actually started doing something called harvest festivals. All around the world in many countries, food is celebrated, you know, and the harvest is that time where we actually come together and we decide to celebrate food. So those are some of the things that we actually got into doing within communities. We also did things like supporting community kitchens, established community networks. So just like this, that Josephine has invited me here to today, you know, connecting with other folks in the city and building networks of folks who are doing that work together. As his work continued, he realized that some of the challenges were in policy. So he got into policy development and advocacy, and then just generally building partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Community gardens were a great place for folks to be able to get together, share cultural tradition that they would have, but also learn about, you know, local foods and foods that we'd be able to grow here, as well as what ancestral or foods from their country they were able to do. So some of what you're seeing here is from an East African women's community garden that happened in Lawrence Heights many years back. And it was a space where women would be able to come together with their children, garden, you know, talk, hang out, but doing it all around food at that leadership point. As I mentioned, harvest festivals. So we would come together and just bring out a variety of folks in the community and let them see what we're able to grow locally. We also featured local musicians and overall just had a chance for folks to get together. Lawrence Heights is a community that, you know, if you live in it, how you feel about it is different than how people outside the community would feel about it. And our harvest festivals were a time when we'd be able to bring folks in, bring in, you know, the news, different people from outside of the community to see the greatness of what was happening in Lawrence Heights community that was cultivated through food. Another thing that we did was the Cultivating Youth Leadership Project, which was actually funded by the Youth Challenge Fund. And that initiative focused on getting youth, young people involved in this work, literally from getting them involved in you know, planting in the grounds, helping with the community gardens. The picture that you're seeing in the top left, that's actually when we took our group to Detroit and connected them with an organization out there that was doing similar work. And what was really pivotal about that is that there's a lot that we take for granted here in Toronto that we have way more over the US. And so, for example, at that garden, they actually used to have to take buckets of water to be able to water all their plants. Whereas almost every garden that we did here in Toronto, we could just connect to a hose and be able to water the garden. So it was definitely an interesting experience for the youth to be able to see, you know, how different the United States was and how challenging it is to actually get fresh, healthy food out there. Here, if you drive typically 3-4 blocks in most communities, you can see a grocery store. In Detroit, you sometimes have to drive many miles to find one. You'll find a lot of bodegas, you'll find a lot of pharmacies, you'll find a lot of liquor stores, but a place where you can actually buy fresh greens was far and few back in those days, and still very much is like that. As I said, you know, we did community markets. And all around, you know, it was just about building capacity and getting folks to share and using food as that catalyst. Recently, in the last couple of years, we've partnered with Black Creek Community Health Center with an initiative we call Food as Medicine. So as you see here, you know, a lot of times doctors will promote, you know, you need to take these different drugs or these different pills to kind of help yourself. And with our partnership with an actual health center, we focus on food. So we actually provide fresh food that we grow at our urban farm to this community health center, and the dietitians actually sort of prescribe it to some of their participants who are having different health challenges, and just encourage them to eat, you know, local, eat organic, and eat culturally specific food. You know, and this is a quote that my dad shares in a lot of his presentations. You know, in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist, we must be anti-racist. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things that I've taken for granted, not realizing how critical it is for others. Are you guys still able to see the screen here? All right. So fast forward to last year, we started working with 2019, we started working with the City of Toronto around developing a Black Food Sovereignty Alliance, which would be an alliance of folks, you know, various actors throughout the city who are promoting and advancing food security and food sovereignty, Black food sovereignty. And so we started to develop an association to see how we could bring that and work with the city's anti-Black racism unit to really challenge things both from a community level, but from a policy level as well. And just as we were starting to get that work together and looking forward to launching the Alliance in 2020, COVID hit. And as a result, we realized a lot of folks were facing food insecurity. So we developed this initiative here, Black Food Toronto, as a way of addressing food insecurities. Since doing that work, it'll show up here, we've packed and delivered over 11,000 food baskets that we've provided to families free of charge through funding and through partnerships with many community members. That's been over 155,000 pounds of food. And that stat doesn't even include the donations we've gotten of staples that we've included in those baskets from time to time. We've been able to do that by raising money in addition to the grants that we get. And we have this kind of simple form folks can go and be able to fill out this form to be able to get an emergency food basket delivered to them. You'll see here from this form, we do ask a lot of questions. They're not all mandatory, but it's a way for us to gather data to be able to share a better example of who the individuals are signing up for this food and where the need is. Do I have about a minute 30? I'd like to show you guys a video. All right, let me know if the audio plays for this.
Okay, no problem.
Prior to COVID-19, more than 28% of Black households in Canada were food insecure, more than twice the national average. Food insecurity takes a tremendous toll on one's health and well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic has magnified the challenges African, Caribbean, and Black communities in Canada face in accessing healthy and culturally specific foods. One of the stronger examples of this is in Toronto, Canada's largest city, where 24% of Black households were already food insecure. The African Food Basket launched the Black Food Toronto initiative to provide emergency food support to members of Toronto's African, Caribbean, and Black communities facing heightened food insecurity. Through a partnership with the City of Toronto's Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, the generosity of donors and funders, and the dedication of volunteers, this food sovereignty initiative delivers fresh fruits and vegetables weekly at no cost to people and families in need during these challenging times. Through this work, we are making it easier for families to make healthy food choices that can help develop healthy eating patterns and improve overall health. If you have suffered hardships during the pandemic or wish to donate, please visit blackfoodtoronto.com for more information. Prior to COVID-19, more than 28% of Black households in Canada.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was a little video we put together just to kind of share, why we do what we do and how we do it. And I'll be honest, like it's a blessing. Like it's something, again, so many will take for granted in terms of what it means to have access to food in general, but have access to culturally specific food. And this initiative was really amazing. Last summer, in our box, you would get stuff like mangoes, oranges, avocado, plantain, sweet potatoes, as much as we could to kind of give you that cultural feel, allow you to make meals that were specific to your culture and your diet. And it's the feedback we got was amazing. We would have people calling us, especially seniors, saying how, because of the isolation, they can't go out. There's a lot of things that they can't do, but being able to receive this box and, being able to fry some plantain or, bite into a juicy mango has been amazing and definitely impacted them in a great way.
Definitely, yo. Thank you so much, Zakiah. And also, I'm gonna take this time too and leave it open if anyone has any questions for Zakiah. This is your opportunity to ask or put something in the chat.
Sorry, that was just that was an accident. I was trying to put something else in there, and I put my land acknowledgement.
It's all good.
I have a question. I was talking to somebody, the emergency food team at the city, a couple of days ago. And I know that we've been struggling to get more space arranged and lined up. And they told me that they had a space in mind and they wanted to tell you about the Gibson Museum. So I didn't know if you'd been, if you'd found out about that yet.
I haven't, but I definitely, we get so much emails. There's three of us who tackle our regular emails on a daily basis, but I haven't seen that, but I will definitely do a search for that.
Yeah, I thought that was exciting. So can you tell us like currently thoughts on what a community like ours could be doing to help expand and move this forward? Just a couple of quick thoughts from your perspective.
Well, I mean, we've already talked about, you know, cool partnerships and seeing how, and we've actually already started working together. I think it's really just about spreading that word of mouth and getting folks to really start to stress to, you know, whether it's politicians or other community members, the importance of food and food access, and being able to get the support. Like, we started this initiative, the Black Food Toronto initiative, doing about 80 baskets a week. We're now up to doing 460 a week. And a lot of it is door-to-door delivery. So one thing that a community like yours can do is definitely see how you could band together to either be able to purchase baskets for community members who may be challenging, or seeing how to kind of cultivate a group that would be able to purchase together and be able to tap into the program that we have available. Our biggest mandate is really to increase food access. You know, so we don't do large markups like the grocery store or some other food programs. We do, you know, add a little bit of administrative costs. Obviously, you know, we have to cover our costs and get paid, but we pass on as much of those savings to individuals as much as possible. So every week, you know, we're purchasing over $6,000 worth of food and distributing it for the most part free to community members. There's a lot of cool things we're going to be doing this year. I'm stepping up more into a leadership role. So definitely looking at how to bring cool technology into things, how to get more young people involved, and really just see how we can take more control of our food and the food that we have access to. You know, that means stuff like importing. Like, as a result of last year, I typically travel a lot. I do freelance photography and videography, and it usually gives me a great outlet to go see the world and enjoy great food and, you know, enjoy coconuts. So because I have not been able to travel as much, you know, me and a friend, we started actually importing coconuts. So every week we buy and sell fresh coconuts because it's something that kind of gives us that feeling of being in the Caribbean. So even though, you know, it's like -7 outside, it's a cold day, I can wake up and enjoy a coconut. And just being able to start my day like that, you know, does so much to kind of give me some centering, give me some peace, and dealing with the day-to-day challenges. It makes it a bit easier knowing that I can still have that kind of connection. So, you know, and again, with this, you know, me and my friend, we started buying 10 boxes a week. We're now up to buying about 80 cases of coconut a week, distributing it across the city. I've even formed a few partnerships with some local restaurants that now you can go and like order a meal and get a coconut.
I just want to ask you one question. The cultivating youth leadership, is that something that's still ongoing?
It is. COVID has definitely impacted it, but it is something that we're still doing. So last year, we had two young men who've been at our farm for about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually take more of a leadership role in terms of the growing. So we have a 1 acre piece of land up at Jane and Steele. It's an urban farm where we grow as much as we can throughout the summer. We're in discussions right now to see how we might be able to increase how much young people would be able to work up there this year, just given, you know, the ongoing changes because of COVID. But we tap into funding from the federal government through their Canada Summer Jobs program to be able to hire youth and pay them to do this work. So basically you're getting paid to learn how to do this work. And, you know, some individuals come in, they have the passion, they have the experience. Some come in just because they need a summer job. But in the end, there's definitely a lot of knowledge that's gained and a lot of understanding. And it really opens up a lot of individuals to the importance of food and really being able to see the difference. You know, when you grow a tomato yourself and you buy that tomato, you know, at the end of the season when it's grown, there's a much different taste and pleasure you'll get from enjoying that as opposed to going to the grocery store and buying something that's on sale.
Understood. Thank you for that. And
Question.
Question. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut. You create alliances. Have you created any alliance? This is now what, 25 years, you say, of African Food Basket?
Yeah.
And where does most of your alliances come from? And where do you source most of your food?
So in terms of what we buy locally, we source from local farmers, so Black farmers across Ontario, as well as various farmers.
Mhm.
We also purchase directly from the Ontario Food Terminal, so directly from importers, and then we grow as much as we can. In terms of alliances, I mean, we definitely have a lot locally across the city. We have some partnerships in Guyana as well, where my dad is from. So he goes from time to time and has been doing some prayer. One thing you had mentioned earlier about seeds and farmers kind of being encouraged to buy like more of the GMO seeds and use those.
Yes.
One thing he's been doing is actually instilling seed saving programs that has started in Guyana with
Good.
stuff like Callaloo and stuff that's local, but we're definitely looking at how to expand that across the Caribbean.
Good. 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 So we can link up then.
Definitely. With what you were saying earlier, I know my dad, and I would like to have a conversation with you.
Yes, definitely.
All right, thank you, Zakiah, for the very nice presentation and all the good work that you guys are doing. It's very appreciated.
Thank you.
No problem. So with that being said, we're gonna go on to the next speaker, which will be Auntie Josephine. You can take it away.
Thank you, Marley. Thanks, you guys. That's exactly the kind of discussion I was hoping to have. I think for us here in St. Jamestown, we've been trying to address the challenge of food security in what is probably the most diverse community in the world for quite some time now. And we have many challenges down here in downtown Toronto that are very unusual. So, you know, it's not that there aren't grocery stores and organic food stores and all kinds of things around us. It's just that for many, many people, sometimes we like to call it a food zoo as opposed to a food desert, because when you can see the healthy food, but you can't afford to buy it, especially if you have a number of children, that's a very different experience than, you know, having to drive many, many miles, for instance, to go to a grocery store as they do in other parts of the city and in Detroit and such. So when we started working on this issue of healthy food access in St. Jamestown in 2010, there was a lot of dialogue around how challenging it was to get the right kinds of food for different cultures. How would we be able to address that? What would be, you know, some of the strategies? And one of the things we realized is that, you know, if you look at Canada, in particular in Ontario, and you look at our farming and our agricultural cycles and systems, we are very food insecure here. And that's something that a lot of newcomers very quickly pick up. And they also, you know, were very concerned about the quality of food that they could get in a grocery store, because, you know, they could even taste the difference right away. Like something looks like a pepper, but it doesn't taste like a pepper. Something looks like a tomato, but it sure doesn't taste like one. And there's a lot of, you know, agitation and concern about the quality of food that people are able to afford. So we talked about how are we going to be able to actually grow food in a time of climate chaos, when weather events and changes to the weather are throwing agriculture off kilter, when we know that, for instance, 4 or 5 years ago, Ontario's corn crop was almost wiped out. I can't remember, it was an unseasonal drought, which thing it was, or maybe it was the early spring flooding. But either way, you know, our food insecurity is getting worse and worse, partly due to climate chaos, partly due to corporate farming. We've lost about 6 million hectares of farmland in Ontario alone to soil depletion from factory farming, poisoning and depleting the soil. So we thought, oh, okay, so we're actually facing a lot of problems with our food supply. It's not just the cost. And this is how we started thinking about the Oasis model of how could we grow food in the city? What about all the farmers who are struggling to feed us, and particularly those that are farming responsibly, who are farming clean, healthy food, are struggling so hard just to survive and make a living. So we thought, you know, maybe there's a lot of underground space in St. Jamestown. We have almost no land space. Like there's maybe a tiny little postage stamp here and a tiny little plot there where we could grow a little bit of food. It's not going to help us with 20,000 people very much. So we realized, though, there's a lot of underground parking, there's a lot of sub-basement spaces in the buildings. And as we were looking into technologies for urban agriculture, we realized that there was a really important benefit to considering aquaponics as a solution, because aquaponics creates an organic cycle of growing vegetables and fish in a sort of closed loop where you recycle the water, the fish put nutrients in the water, the plants bring up those nutrients, the water gets filtrated and put back to the system. And it's 97% more efficient than field agriculture when it comes to water use. And it's something that can be done easily underground where the temperature is more easily kept stable. So we looked into all kinds of technologies and we got involved with a lot of different experts. And we came up with a whole food hub model that we thought could become self-sustaining if we were able to build it. And the idea would be to do a whole food cycle so that we would grow the food and also bring food from local farms. We would process it, distribute it, maybe turn it into sauces, salads, whatever, maybe sell some of it to like our very wealthy neighbors. It's another thing that makes us a little unique. We have two of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country right next door as a market. We also thought we should then take all of the food waste from the apartment buildings, from the food hub, and put it through composting and or biogeneration, be able to use the biogas from the food waste to help power the food hub, that we would be able then to also use this food hub as a way to create entrepreneurial opportunities for residents, jobs for residents, education for residents, education for local universities and colleges, so that more and more people could learn about how to support and maintain healthy local food systems. So this is a vision that we've been working so hard on with the Oasis Food Hub. The other thing that we've come across as a really important concept is that a majority of the people in our community are from the global south, and similarly to people of African descent. It's not just culturally appropriate, it's biologically necessary for us to have certain ingredients, that we need those things in our diet for us to be healthy. It's been discovered that in St. Jamestown, we have among the highest rates of respiratory illness, childhood autism, and other issues like this. This comes from living in a concrete jungle where there's 2,000 to 3,000 people crammed into these concrete buildings, and then nobody can even go outside for more than a couple of minutes, especially if they're from the south, for months and months and months of the year. And nobody's telling people here, you have to take a lot of vitamin D if you're from the south and stuff like that. So we really wanted to recognize that there are different dietary needs, and we need to come up with different ways and systems to respect those needs and meet those needs. So one of the things we were thinking about is working with people in the Caribbean. I know friends of mine who have farmland down there, and precisely what Ezekiel was talking about, finding ways to exchange labor and food between the Caribbean and here. So rather than importing migrant workers and doing slave labor on our fields, we could be co-ops working together. We could be members of co-ops together across borders and be able to support our own healthy, sustainable food that would, for finally actually give a healthy, decent diet to the Black communities in Toronto, but would also benefit other communities with similar food needs. So this has been a big part of our thinking as we organized around the St. Jamestown Co-op and our food hub. And as you know, we recently started doing emergency food hampers and have been working with African Food Basket to start bringing more produce into the community. So we're really wanting to figure out how to grow that relationship, to strengthen that relationship, to work with Ezekiel and others to figure out how we can create a relationship with farmers in the Caribbean and other places. And we also partnered with a food trading company that is importing food from West Africa, Central America, Caribbean, other places to get things, big staples like rice and other important ingredients for our kind of diet. So we have a partnership with them, but really it's a matter of building up enough buying power to be able to make imports affordable to the folks here in Toronto. So this has been a lot of our work. And I was going to show a slide, but I'm just going to go over it very quickly, that one of the things that guides our work here in St. Jamestown is the human rights framework. And that's important because it's common across the world, and many people from other parts of the world are very well educated about it. So it's an easily understandable framework and foundation for us to be able food. And when you look at the actual details of the right to food, what you start to understand is that we do not have the right to food properly respected in this country. Only people with wealth and time can actually have their right to food met, because to have truly have
Auntie Joe, you cut out there.
Might be an internet issue.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we're back.
So where did I cut out?
Right to food.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was going to say, if you look at the, sorry, the internet connection's a little unstable. We have that TCC cheap account. Yeah. So the right to food is very specific and detailed, and it talks about food being unadulterated. In other words, not contaminated. It talks about it has to be nutritious. It has to be sustainable so that our food system can continue to feed future generations. And what I was saying is that here in Canada, our right to food is not respected. Unless you're very wealthy and have a lot of time, we do not really have the right to food. So we need to look at the right to food holistically and understand that there are a variety of aspects to making it a real human right for us. So one of those things is also about making sure people have time to even be able to bring together the right ingredients and prepare them. This is more time than most people have. So there's a lot of factors towards having the right to food, and we're trying to figure out how we in our community can work towards those factors. So one of those things too has been fighting for a basic income, because whether it's farmers who don't have enough income to have a decent livelihood while they feed us, or whether it's artists who we rely on for our culture and our humanity, or whether it's people who are in the food processing system, or people on the front lines as essential workers, we all need more time and we all need more income, stable income. We need to be able to meet our basic needs. So we also fight for basic income for that reason. But we do so always within the framework of human rights. And that means that we respect each other and we understand that we have different needs, but also many of the same needs. And we need to figure out how collectively we can work on those together. So to me, when we use human rights, then we also look at the rights of Indigenous people, the rights of them to have control over their land and determine how natural resources are used. The self-determination of Indigenous people is very important to the people in this region for our survival. And there's also the Decade for Peoples of African Descent, wherein this governments are supposed to be putting forward funding and programs for restitution and reparations, and it's not really been happening. So there's a number of ways I think that we can push on the policy level as well as organizing on the ground with each other to realize the right to food for the Black community. I think I went over time.
It's all good. No, thank you very much, Auntie Joe. And this would be a time right now also just for some Q&As for anything that Auntie Joe was talking about. So you guys can take that time right now. Auntie Joe, I actually have a question.
Okay.
How did that the emergency food response thing, how did that like come about? I know you kind of spoke to it, but like just in a little bit more detail, because like just as like someone who's like volunteering and stuff like that, I wasn't on the other side of like getting it organized or whatever, but that brought a lot of I brought like a sense of purpose to me, because when I was able to like drop off the food to people, and like some people like I think they was maybe cautious as to like who was knocking on their door, and then when I let them know, I said, no, this is the food basket, you know what I mean? They had a big smile on their face. It made me understand the importance, like how important it is, and like how much people are actually in need, not only in St. Jamestown, but probably in another and a lot of other communities as well. But they don't have things like this in place. So are these people hungry? Like, how are they getting their food, right?
Well, for us, we've been doing a bulk food buying club for about a year and a half. So we have health food suppliers for dried goods, like dried fruit, beans, pulses, seeds, things like that. We applied for Red Cross emergency funding, and we actually were turned down several times because they didn't understand how a co-op was nonprofit. So we had to alter and adjust our grant a little bit, and then they finally gave it to us. They finally gave it to us late November and told us we had to spend it between the 5th of December and February 19th. So we had like an absolutely, high warp speed ramp up to hire people, to get it going, to get it organized. And literally the day before we were supposed to start, we got permit to access the community center. And otherwise it would have been running out of my house, which would have been really challenging. Actually, as I now know, it would have been impossible to do 200 food hampers every 2 weeks in my living room. It just simply wouldn't have been possible. But luckily, we were able to get access to the community center. But this speaks to a huge problem in our community that is, I know, happening across the city, but it's worse in St. Jamestown than almost anywhere else, and that is access to community space for community projects and community organizations.
Yes.
It's incredibly difficult, incredibly tight. I've been in this fight for, I don't know, 25 years now, and sometimes we get a little space and sometimes we don't. Obviously, we're downtown Toronto, so most of the market or commercial space is far out of reach for any nonprofit. And the public space there's lots and lots of people competing for an hour here and an hour there, so you can't get anything permanent. And then in the buildings, most of these buildings have community spaces that are locked, shut down, not open, not available, which is a crime. It's absolutely a crime in my perspective that this is the case. So there's a lot of things to be solved here, and there's a lot of fights we need to have. But I will mention that, I do think that for the emergency food relief, the fact that we had suppliers already, we were able to give out, rice and lentils and things like that, that I don't think a lot of food programs do or can do. Also spices, which is really usually hard to get. We have a very great partner that gives discount or almost free often spices for our community. So we're very grateful for that. And then working with African Food Basket and a local grocer, we've been purchasing the fresh food the day before, the day of, and packing it as quickly as we can so that it gets to people nice and fresh. But we definitely want to build up our work alongside the Black Food Network. Mm-hmm. And I should mention that I guess a couple months ago, the city voted to make Black food sovereignty a priority. Mm-hmm. And for the first time in the over 25 years that we've been trying to work on this issue, I know I helped Zakia's dad start the African Food Basket when I was the chair of Food Share. And it was a struggle even then. It was a fight to like, no, we actually need different food. We actually need to have Black food sovereignty. So it was a big battle to get it started. And I'm just so happy and proud to see how it's come along. But we have an opportunity right now, I think, to leverage the little bit of political will and a lot more persons of African descent within the city government structure. This is a very important time for us to mobilize and come together and get really strong about it and make sure that we start accessing the kind of spaces we need and getting the kind of resources we need. So hopefully this emergency food hamper project is finished February 19th, but we were able to raise some money and go for an extra month, get an extra month permit. But then after that, where's the space? What are we going to do? We're going to go back to my house, in which case we're not going to be able to feed very many people, no matter how much funding we're able to raise. And it's also really impossible to run these things without some staff. I mean, we have a lot of wonderful volunteers in St. Jamestown. I'm very proud of the mobilization of people wanting to help out here, but we can only do so much without making sure there are some dedicated staff, because it's an enormous amount of work that Yasmin and Avery and Haley and others have been doing. It's a lot of work. So to do a healthy food is an awful lot of work. We could just sit here and let Daily Bread bring us a truckload, but we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
for sure. And like African Food Basket, we're looking for the best sources, the healthiest sources. We work with farm partners. We have Mennonite farmers from the Eco-Just Food Network. We're working with local farms on a sort of policy fight around making a more resilient food system. You can see that at Eco-Just Food Network. And we have an open letter that we're going to use to push government to understand that they need to reallocate their spending on food into helping to create a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive food system. So we're making some very key demands around how our governments need to spend our taxes on our food system.
For real though. And I was gonna say, Ezekiel, did you want to add on, or did you have any questions?
No, I wanted to ask a question.
For sure.
We're focusing on Black food sovereignty. Have we collected a listing of who we need to get involved, like in terms of the community? because we need to outreach, don't we need to outreach? That's
definitely-
my question.
No, it's a great question. And actually that's what a big part of today is about, is to start that process, that specific process. We've been doing a lot of outreach in general, and usually we work on the basis of, because we have such a diverse community, we don't pinpoint or focus on any particular group or ethnicity. But in this case, we do know that roughly 15% of our community is of African descent, be they from Africa, the Caribbean, Canada, the US, South America, wherever. We probably have one of the most diverse African descendant communities in the world here. So it's a little different from some other communities in terms of how we outreach to folks of African descent from many different cultures. But I think it's an incredibly important process. And you know, I want us to have a discussion after a short break. I'd like us to have a group discussion about how we can go about organizing around this issue in this community, and in support also of the Black Food Network African Food Basket.
For sure. Auntie Joe, I have one more question for you. And then for the next 5 minutes, we're gonna like open it up just for overall questions. So for Aziki, Zakaya, whatever the case, if anyone had questions and they weren't able to ask them, we're gonna leave 5 minutes for that before we go into the break. But the question was, how is the underground aquaponics system in St. Jamestown coming along? This is an amazing idea. I'd love to learn more about. That's from Dimitri.
Thank you, Dimitri. That's a topic that we're going to have to discuss in more detail when we have a workshop about the Oasis Food Hub. But while we've been able to prove that it's technically viable and impossible, and we actually had some support from the city councilor to start pushing on the idea of setting up an aquaponics system in the abandoned swimming pool under 325 Bleecker, we've encountered a lot of resistance from the bureaucracy around zoning permits, particularly from Toronto Community Housing. They've been resisting this idea and our food hub idea since, I don't know, I guess maybe about 2014, 2015. They keep telling us it's not their business. They don't care about food, don't talk to them, whatever. But they also keep telling us that we're not allowed to do this, that, or the other thing. And like, we're tenants, we're paying rent. These are our buildings, these are our homes. It really makes me angry. But I can say though that it's been really exciting to watch the evolution of aquaponics technology. And we can see that there's a lot more possibilities than there were before around the kinds of food that can be grown in aquaponics facilities. It's technically absolutely viable and possible. And I've heard lots of affirmation that doing it underground is a very, very good idea. But we have to move the landowners, the city, the province. The province also has, you know, a number of regulatory barriers that we have to overcome. So, you know, it's a fight. It's really a fight. But that's also why I said this is a good time to have that fight. And that's going to be hopefully part of the fight.
Thank you. Thank you. And for anyone else, also too, we're about to go on break for in 2 minutes. But I want to leave this time too. If you guys had any questions and you weren't able to ask them for any of our speakers, Aziki, Zakaya, or Auntie Joe, please ask them now. And we'll be going on break in 2 minutes at 3:10.
Can the panelist ask another panelist a question?
Of course.
Okay, this is for Zakaya and Josephine. I'm about land. I'm always about land. So my question is, how can we get access to land without having to go through the city? What can we do as a grouping, as an alliance, to get access to land, to use our own resources to get access to land? Does anyone have any info?
So one of the things that we've done in the past was the Community Backyard Garden Initiative, which we focused on finding backyard space that folks would be able to cultivate in. You know, for example, there's a lot of seniors from the Caribbean who've come up here. You know, they bought their property, they have their backyard, but they're in a position where they're too old to actually be able to grow anything in their backyard. So that's one option that we're kind of looking at, is seeing about creating like a series of backyards throughout the city where we essentially sort of rent their backyard and grow food in their backyard. Looking at a way of doing it in that, if we have 10 different backyards, each different backyard would be growing a specific crop. Whoever's backyard we're using, obviously they get to benefit from what's being grown, but then seeing how that could be shared. Another conversation that we're actually having right now, it is definitely not a short-term solution, but the Downsview Airport is actually being closed. And that piece of land, which is a huge piece of land, there's a developer that's working on it right now, and they've actually brought us into the conversation, and we're discussing potentially, seeing about getting anywhere from like 10 to 40 acres of land there that we'd be able to use towards food sovereignty. But that's probably like a 10-year project, just in terms of the bureaucracy, in terms of actually solidifying land like that.
Yeah.
But when that does sort of complete, it is title ownership. And we're very excited to see what we're able to do there. Because of COVID, we're not doing the community plots that we typically do up at Black Creek Farm in partnership with them. But there's a lot of space that's available. And we'll be working on making that information more known and seeing how we can be more collective and specific of how we use that space and how we grow.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that, as part of EcoJust Food Network, we are working with the National Farmers Union and local farming food co-op, and there are a number of farms and farm spaces. For instance, the Black Farmers Collective has some space at Downsview, but also some plots in an unusual farming piece of project in Milton, Ontario. And then we have a good relationship with Adinkra Farm, which is near Barrie, which is a Afrocentric Black-owned farm in Summer Camp, where they have some beautiful, beautiful, pristine agricultural land there that we would like to talk about and figure out how we could get people to do some farm training there. EcoJust Food Network has been set up in order to help train people to do agroecological farm work and support small farmers. So what we're trying to do is link and connect people who want to do that kind of work with the farmers who need that kind of help and make that part of our food system. So that's part of why we created EcoJust Food Network from our Urban Rural Food Forum. So I think we're going to take a break.
Yes, I was going to say that's my fault. Sorry about that.
Hold on.
But yeah, everybody, take a 5-minute break. And also, I'm going to put in the chat just some things to think about when we come back, and we're gonna have a discussion about it. So, thank you.
Okay. Come and do it now.
Guys, so I'm filming this short 5-minute vlog to talk about the work that I've been doing during the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been working with my dad and an initiative that my family started a little while ago, and I've been giving out fruits to the less fortunate, to homeless people down in downtown Toronto. So I filmed this vlog a little while ago, but I did not film an intro and I barely filmed like me talking. So this is my intro to the video. I'm just gonna be talking throughout the whole thing, showing like clips of what I've been doing, just so you guys could like understand like what's been like going on, like what I've been doing. So first we washed all the fruits, we washed the oranges, we washed the mangoes, we dried them off, we put them in bags. And we weighed them just to like see like how much all of the fruits would like weigh together. So we weighed them. And then we took it into the car, and after we took it into the car, we drove downtown. And it wasn't really a long drive, but we drove downtown, and after we did that, we were just like putting all the fruits in, like extra fruits in my bag just in case. And then we walked around to like find some homeless people, and we found a few, and everyone was super grateful. Everyone was so nice, like they loved it. There were people like, oh, like do you have any more mangoes? Like the mangoes were great because like they don't get to experience that as often as us, like where we could just go to the grocery store and be like, oh, I feel for mangoes, and have that just available, have that ready. And we even got to meet this one gentleman, and I'll insert a clip of him talking, but he loved the mangoes, like absolutely loved them.
Guys, come here, man. Grab the oranges.
You get more?
Oranges, here. There's one mango in there. Okay. Is there any more mango?
No.
They're good, thank you.
So after that, I walked around to a few different areas downtown. There was actually like it was kind of like a camp where there was like a bunch of these homeless people. They had tents set up, and it was just really nice to see like they kind of had their own community, and like all of them were super nice. Like I said before, none of them were like violent or like disrespectful. Like another thing like people don't really understand, I feel like, is homeless people are basically the same as us.
Thank you for thinking about us.
It's just their situation is a little bit different than our situation, and homeless people, like they always do the best with what they're given. And yes, some of them turn to drugs, and yes, some of them turn to different outlets that may not be as positive to express themselves, but like it's what they are given in the time that they have.
All right, God bless you. Please.
So I thought it was really empowering to see like the way that they were so grateful, and everyone was just like, everyone loved it, and it was just a really nice experience to get to do something like that. But back to what I was saying about the organization. The organization I was working with is the African Food Basket. It's a not-for-profit organization that my grandfather started 25 years ago. That is it for my video. I am over time, and I just want to say thank you, Miss, for giving me this assignment. It was really fun to.
Auntie Joe had shared that this is a very beautiful video, and I agree with you.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, when Mike Harris came in and we started having a lot of homeless people for the first time when they cut welfare, and I used to go to the encampments, it used to blow my mind, you know, just how close everybody is to that line, how precarious life is for so many people, and you never know who you're going to find in those situations. And a lot of single moms whose kids were taken by Children's Aid because they were poor. Just so many people that never used to be homeless. We never used to see people of color homeless. We never used to see women. But that's just been getting worse and worse and worse. And through this pandemic, and then evicting people in the middle of this pandemic, they're everywhere. It's outrageous. I know that one of our member organizations, started by one of our residents, Auntie Amal's Community Center, and it's a lot of Muslim women and men who work together around these issues. And they've been also like bringing out cooked food to a lot of these homeless encampments. And, you know, it's just, you know, folks who've come from other parts of the world and, you know, like Auntie Amal, and then realize that we have all these people with no home and living in the wintertime, freezing to death in parks. It's just, they couldn't help themselves. You know, they've been driving around with hot meals, and yeah, it's heartbreaking. But I really thank you so much, Zakai. Your daughter's beautiful, and I'm so proud of you guys. It's just so exciting. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, you know, like part of the reason why I shared that video, it really shows that, you know, what you expose individuals to, especially children, it can resonate in all different types of ways. Because, you know, none of that was forced. That was an initiative she started on her own, just because she was in a position to be able to do that, and also understanding the needs. So, you know, conversation like this and getting especially young people involved is critical, because we can all find our own ways to add value.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point, that every person can add value. And when we have a cooperative, we're all member owners, and every one of us has both the right and responsibility to direct that co-op and to make things happen within the co-op. And if we choose to have a working group or a committee or whatever we want to call it, a sub-project around Black food sovereignty in the co-op, it gives us the democratic autonomy to be able to do that, and also the organizational base and power to be able to, you know, get resources, raise resources, be organized, be partners, be able to partner with the Black Food Network, be able to partner with African Food Basket, you know, be able to partner with Auntie Amal Community Center, be able to, you know, work on these issues collectively and individually, to see how much Zakai's daughter could do on her own, and how much happiness she could bring to folks who feel and are often completely ignored and overlooked. You know, it's just such a beautiful thing. It's so important. So Marley's put some great questions in the chat for us to think about. And I'm not sure who's all back yet. Oh, I guess most of us are, well, there's 19 of us online, but I'm not sure who's here. Oh, hi, Roxy. Hi, Sierra. I should mention too that one of our co-op partners has been incredibly important to all of our work since about 2007, 8? No, sorry, 2011. I'm getting so old, I get my decades mixed up. We've been working with Conscious Minds Co-op. It started as a free school project, and we wanted to do intergenerational knowledge sharing and support between elders and youth. So with Roxy and others, we started a summer camp, and then that grew into a co-op. And they have been absolutely critical in the development of our food hub, in helping with the feasibility study, with design charrettes, with community engagement. They're brilliant at doing participatory education. So they are the lead organization around the education aspects of the Oasis Food Hub. And they were a key player partner in our emergency food hub, which the year before was an urban rural food system conference forum that we had with the Farmers Union and others, so that we could have a dialogue with our farmers. And then last year it turned into emergency food forum online because of COVID. And it was Conscious Minds that did the facilitation and a lot of the work to prepare for it and to gather input from the 73 participants in that emergency food forum. So it's been a wonderful partnership, and it's been a channel for youth of all kinds and backgrounds who care about resilience, sustainability, a thrivable future. It's been a wonderful partnership for us, and an opportunity for all kinds of youth to work together. So I would want to make sure that that was also emphasized and put on the table. They're part of our co-op family. So looking at those questions that Molly posted, I'd love to hear from people. It's all your turn, all y'all turn. Whether you have ideas, questions, problems, examples, please just go for it. Whether you want to put it in the chat or speak it, you're here. Don't be shy.
Auntie Joe, I was just gonna add, like, from my personal take, like, this is the first time I've actually like had a conversation about Black food sovereignty. You know, I've never really known the depths of it, and also I wasn't aware of like the stuff like the Black food basket. I mean, the African food basket and all that stuff, like the amazing work that's being done. You know what I mean? And like, I just feel like when it comes to our communities, we always hear about like the negative aspects, you know what I mean? But we don't have enough light or attention shedded on these things where people is actually going out of their way and committing to giving back, you know what I mean? Just for the well-being of foods and our health, you know what I mean? Because if we're not eating foods that's healthy, we're not going to be healthy, right? So like, I just think personally, like, what I'd like to see happen to build Black food sovereignty, I think like, even if you don't know the ins and outs of it, or if you yourself don't like have any involvement in it, I think it's just important to like educate yourself and spread the word, right?
Yeah.
You know, like that never hurts. That never hurts. You can always learn about something that you don't know. You know, our minds, it's sponges, you know? Our minds are craving for information, and to be learning about things like this instead of like the negative stuff that they be saying going on in our communities, it gives me a better sense of like, you know, being from St. Jamestown and or whatever, you know, it gives me a sense of purpose and a sense that I want to give back and I want to learn more. I want to get more involved. You know what I mean? Because this is food we're talking about here, right?
Indeed.
It's great to hear that. And I mean, you know, it's one of the challenges of being a nonprofit is being a nonprofit, especially that services an area that's not highly funded, is, you know, we don't have as much access to funding as possible, which makes, you know, marketing and, you know, for example, being able to get like a PR person that can help tell our stories, because you make a great point. You know, it's 25 years that this organization has been around, and there's many people who to this day have never heard of it or have never heard of some of the things that we've done, how we've impacted even their community. You know, there are people who, for example, they actually garden in a community garden that we set up over 15 years ago, and they don't even know that we're the one that made it happen for them.
Exactly.
Or there's folks who are, you know, they're facing food insecurities and they don't know that they can access this program, because from time to time, like, we see these huge spikes in registrations, especially every time the city does kind of impose a lockdown or something like that. You know, during the first sort of bigger lockdown that took place in November, we saw over 4,000 people sign up in about 72 hours.
Wow.
And then shortly after that, later on in December, some folks started sharing the link to our application on Facebook and WhatsApp. And, you know, we now have a wait list that's probably over 3,000 people, with us only being able to serve about 400, 450 a week. So, you know, the need is there. We've been advocating a lot with the city to try to push and, you know, let them know that they need to be part of the solution. Like, as an organization, yes, we're here to operate independently and do what we can. But when we're not properly funded, when we're not properly resourced, you know, similar to what Josephine has mentioned, we don't have our own space. You know, we operate out of another organization that, due to the impact of COVID, they're not able to utilize their whole space. So we've transformed the room that they have pretty much into, like, you know, a food center, where every week, you know, we're able to get, it's up to like 16 volunteers that come through and they help sort, you know, tape boxes. You know, a simple thing like that is something you wouldn't really think about. We do, like I said, over 400 boxes a week. We have one main volunteer who comes and actually builds those boxes, because she's amazing. Like, she's like an automated machine, but she builds those 400 boxes herself. Then we have other volunteers that help put the bags in them and just kind of help prepare everything. So that way, you know, on Thursday when we do our packing and start our distribution, we're able to pack and finish 400 boxes in about 3.5 hours. And then our drivers take 2 to 3 days to get those all out across the city. So there is a lot that can be done. And, you know, like, in terms of the questions that are out there, you know, I don't want folks to be shy. You know, creative ideas are important, and you need to kind of think out the box. When my dad started this 25 years ago, I didn't understand why he was doing it. I didn't understand why people couldn't go to the grocery store like us, why they couldn't go in their backyard like us. But as I got into doing community work myself, you know, understanding how folks are impacted really opened up my eyes and realized why what he was doing was critical. And when you think about it, you know, most folks actually think about food last. You know, when you get a paycheck, you know, you're concerned about, you know, making sure you pay your rent. You know, you want to make sure you pay your car bill if you have one. You know, you pay your credit cards. You know, we all got to have the Netflix or some kind of streaming service. We pay our phone bills. You know, food typically comes last. And as a result, you take whatever you have left and you try to stretch it as much as possible. And when you go to grocery stores, stretching that dollar usually means buying food that's, you know, high sodium, you know, high fructose. So it's not really healthy. It's not organic.
No.
And as a result, you're getting a different quality of food. You know, we have like 3 main great grocery store providers in Ontario, and each of them have about 3 different varieties of stores. They have their high-end stores, their middle, and then their low-end. And a lot of, you know, low-income communities have what would be considered the lower-end stores. And they're creative about how they brand them and how they put out the messaging. Like Freshco, Freshco, you know, you hear the name, you're thinking fresh. Oh my God, it must be great. It must be healthy. You know, they sell some of the lowest grades of food available, whereas Metro and the Loblaws are the ones that have the higher grades, but you have to pay that higher price. So you can go to both stores and see a product that looks the same. The price difference is different because the quality of food is different.
Word.
I think it's important for us to realize too that almost all of our food goes through one food terminal, and that's food for all of Ontario, not just Toronto. So even the food that gets, you know, sent up by plane to landlocked reserves in the far north comes to the food terminal. And by the time they get it, it's wilted and stale, and it costs 5 times as much as it costs for us. And having this, you know, entirely corporate controlled food system that runs through one large terminal is really dangerous for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is that the food terminal sits in a floodplain. Even Toronto, the city of Toronto did a study on climate, our climate risks, our climate resilience, and that's when they uncovered that fact that the food terminal sits in a floodplain, and we don't have enough alternate resources to make our food system secure. So I mean, this is something that's really important for people and people from the global south, but it's also important for our entire society that, you know, when you have a very insecure food system that is entirely controlled by a market where the middleman gets all the money, and the many customers can't afford what they need, and too many farmers aren't getting paid what they deserve, this isn't sustainable.
Yeah, and sorry, one more thing I'd like to add, you know, is healthy food is always going to cost more because most places and most mainstream food is subsidized in some way. You know, so the big growers who have the big corporate farms, you know, they get subsidies from the government. Like, you know, if you're listening to the news and you hear about, you know, trade wars, and, you know, at one point Trump was mad with us because, you know, we were exporting a lot of things to America, and he wanted stuff to be grown. He wanted to be able to buy local, but they don't sustain their own farms there. And what we have is more healthy. It's because of subsidies, and, you know, like local farmers, small local farmers don't get access to those. And then when you think about all the spaces, the green spaces that we have in the city where we could grow food, communities could grow food to kind of sustain their communities themselves, there are no subsidies, there are no support for those. You know, we literally have to fundraise and beg and fight for land that is supposed to be ours. You know, Toronto Community Housing is the largest landlord, not in Toronto or in Ontario, it's the largest landlord in Ontario. In North America. Yeah. So space is available, you know, and there's a lot of creative things that they could and should be doing with those spaces, but they're not. And the one sort of positive I've seen through COVID is that it's really made us all realize the importance of food and food access, and how quickly food folks can become food insecure. So it is great that the conversation is being had now and that a lot of folks in positions of power are listening, but we have to continue and keep the pressure on them and really mobilize as community, so that when they come into those communities, they're hearing the same thing. Like as an advocate, I'm able to speak to the mayor's office, I'm able to speak to different levels of government, but then when they are interacting with those communities, it's important that they're hearing or people are echoing the same things I'm saying when I get those opportunities to speak to them. So as you mentioned earlier, Marley, education is important, and through social media and conversation like this, we'll continue to spread the word, because now everybody on this call, understand some of what the food basket's doing. I've shared the links a couple times, so now you guys know a little bit more. You can share that, and we just have to continue to do that, and then also see how we can then circle back around and be more collective.
Understood, and I agree. I just want to share something real quick in the chat from Naveen. She said, "We are a mutual aid network of community fridges across Toronto, where community members leave what they can. Do you have any suggestions about how we can encourage folks leaving food to learn more about Black food sovereignty and be more inclusive in the types of items they leave for their neighborhoods?"
I don't have a quick answer, but my longer answer is, so with the website Black Food Toronto, right now it is a really basic site, but we're working hard to really populate that site. So we're working on developing a database that will actually have, a list of businesses supporting specifically Black food or Black owned businesses doing food work. But one of the things to address that question we're going to be putting is a list of, what are culturally sensitive foods that can or should be available, whether it's through food banks if you're doing donations, or such an innovative initiative like the community fridges, which I've seen versions of in the States, and I really wondered if anybody here was doing that. So I'm excited to hear that that's happening. I've shared my contact information with Naveen, so that way we could see how we might be able to, sometimes we have stuff that's left over, so we might be able to help contribute to those fridges. But also I'd like to know how that was set, see how we can do that. Because I don't know if any of those are in the northwest part of the city, but I would really like to see how we could potentially do something like that up there.
Proper. Thank you. And
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
don't have any of those in our neighborhood. And I heard that there was an effort to shut them down. Naveen, do you want to tell us like where these are now? And
Sure.
were able to save the one that got attacked in Parkdale?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And thank you, Zakia and Josephine, both for your comments. And we will definitely reach out. And I think it's a really good conversation. I think Jaleel is also here from CFTO. And I think Sierra as well might be one of our folks as well. But currently we have 5 fridges across the city. East, we have Pape and Dundas. And we're moving into Danforth area, East York area very shortly. So the fridges are set up very similarly to all sort of fridges set up across North America, where they're on sidewalks or on private property, and neighbors can leave what they can and neighbors can take what they need, kind of concept. So we will definitely reach out. We are always looking for excess food. And then to answer your question about the shutdown, so we had a fridge in Parkdale where a neighbor called 311 on the fridge, and the city called us. Yep, I see shaking heads. And the city called essentially the landlord of the host, and said if it didn't get removed because of an abandoned appliance bylaw, we would see a threat to the landlord. So we've gone around that. We talked to some city councilors, or we tried to talk to some city councilors. We got some legal support. And our go around for that is essentially to set up fridges on private properties or on gray area properties. They're going extremely well. And certainly something that we've been talking about internally is just how to be more mindful about food sovereignty, and specifically around Black food sovereignty in our work. So we're excited to be here, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say that one of the big challenges for St. Jamestown has always been our density. And when I was part of starting the Good Food Box program at Food Share, we were trying to figure out the logistics and everything. I said, I want this to serve my community. And we looked at the numbers and then basically realized that until the program got really, really big, if we were to do that, St. Jamestown would take all of the capacity of the food box program before it could even like get anywhere. So yeah, St. Jamestown is a really challenging community to work within. Toronto Housing has 4 of the 18 buildings, and they're very, very stubborn, as I said before. I can't even imagine a community fridge in St. Jamestown. And, you know, not to say it's a beautiful idea, I really like it. Maybe it could be done, but, you know, everything here is just so tightly controlled and there's so much competition for what little space there is. And I can just imagine them throwing, you know, rule books at us one after the other if we tried it, but certainly encourage that initiative to open up to the issues around food diversity. And to add to what Zakai was saying, we have been doing some food surveys in the community to see what people want and need and stuff. So we are looking at a variety of key choices that people would want to be able to have our farmers grow, would want to be able to import what they find hard to get, stuff like that. So I think we need to be working together around how do we adjust our food system to support the supply of things that people want. Do we have other thoughts? Oh.
Yeah, we have some stuff in the chat. Auntie Joe, would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so this is from Susanna. She said maybe you can post up the website to Black Food Sovereignty TO on the front or side of the fridge and other resources about food sovereignty, or have a list of what kind of foods are needed the most. So I guess just spreading the word and stuff like that. And we appreciate that, Susanna, for sharing that. Roxy Cohan said, sorry, Roxy said maybe at the co-ops they would host one. That's something to keep in mind.
Okay, that would be good.
Mm-hmm. And there's one more there. This is from Dimitri. I work for a nonprofit social service center in Northeast Scarborough, specifically the Malvern community, that has currently developed an urban farm and a hydro corridor set to break ground this year. We're currently looking for farmers as well as folks to join an urban farm advisory committee. If anyone is interested, please contact me. We're also looking for hydroponic units to grow food for the Malvern community. Wow.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Dimitri.
To respond to Dimitri,
You're
I
welcome.
want to say I'm very proud of the work that's being done in Malvern over many, many years. And I know Malvern has been on the cutting edge of a lot of things. And I'm so happy to hear that you guys have been able to get towards the urban farm. I would mention about being in a hydro corridor that it might be a good idea to look at the EMF effect for people spending a lot of time there. There are ways to help protect people. One of the problems we have being downtown is that the folks in communities that are able to get their hands on land are pretty far away, but the more the better. At least we can get there by TTC. And, it's been really hard to mobilize to be able to get people in and out of the countryside, but I'm sure there'd be an interest in that. But also I'd say to you, Dimitri, as well, that you might want to look into EcoJust Food Network, because what we're trying to do is set up a platform so that people can be aware of all the different farms, resources, food organizations that are on the same page, trying to create a resilient food system. So we're wanting to build that up. And like a co-op, it's a matter of the more who join and bring their strengths or their skills or their ideas, the more effective it gets. You can't just rely on funding and the leadership of one or two individuals. We all have to do these things collectively and share and exchange knowledge as we're doing today. And we need to be doing this more and more frequently. So hopefully EcoJust Food Network will grow to be a support for all of us to be able to do those things. I know that somebody else had a question. I think I heard somebody about to ask a question.
I think that was just Dimitri. He hopped on the mic real quick. But Dimitri, if you'd like to come share your piece or whatever, you're more than welcome.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you, Josephine, and I'll definitely be looking into the EcoJust Food Network. I think someone shared the link, or it'll be shared later, I guess. That would be great.
How do we, sorry to cut, but in going forward, how will we go about, in terms of getting things mandated? How are we going to secure Black food sovereignty in our community? Like, how are we going to create that for the future? We're in a crisis now, and getting access to food even on a regular basis is very hard. Now we're in more of a crisis where the crisis is going to continue. So how do we create or put in safeguards to be able to push this forward?
In my opinion, Ezeki, it's first and foremost people power. That is the first part. You know, we have a lot of volunteers with the Emergency Food Relief Project, and it's a great team. Without those people, there would be no project. So money's part of it, but the people have to come first. And the thing is, if we're going to reach out and create a security, Black food security in this particular neighborhood, you're right, we have to do some outreach around that. We have to set up a way in which people can get involved and access. And I think for me, you know, if we can forefront the Black Food Network and be explicitly a part of that, it will help a lot. I do not ever want to reinvent the wheel or do something that someone else is doing if we can do it together. If we can add strength to what they're doing, then that I think is the most important way to go about it. So I think if we can become that sort of liaison channel connection to the Black Food Network and African Food Basket, that's a big part of one large step we can take that can help them and help us. You know, we're all about mutual benefit. We're all about how can we engage with Malvern, with, you know, a new little community farm that Laura Hammond is trying to develop out in Scarborough, with, you know, the Black Farmers Collective, with Sundance and her little BIPOC farm. Like, how do we link up and connect all these things so that we strengthen each other and increase our collective power, both the people power, and then in time we start to realize that we have buying power. And once we have buying power, we can import larger amounts of tropical produce and make sure that the farmers at the other end also get paid. But it requires a lot of people, and people, I think, have to be able to see why they're so important and what the benefit is for them, and realize it doesn't happen instantly. It requires a critical mass before we can achieve certain levels of supply, before we can achieve certain levels of sovereignty. We have to have enough people to do that. But I think this is starting to happen for the first time since Zakai's dad and I started this fight a long time ago. And we're in a really good position right now to push, you know. And so the people powers on the one hand to increase our buying power, on the other hand, it increases our political power. You know, like, they're talking to me about St. Jamestown this week, and I'm talking to them about why doesn't African Food Basket have space yet? We need them to have space, you know? So they're saying, oh, I think we might have some space for them. And like, I've been bugging them for 2 months. I've been phoning all around the city of Toronto, giving them a hard time. And like, we included in our petition, we have a petition for food security space in St. Jamestown. And in that petition, I included the Eco Just Food Network, so people can start seeing the bigger problem, because I said in there, we are not alone. And this is a big fight that we all need to take on. And I think what also, you know, white folks and settler folk need to realize is that, you know, there's a lot of Black people involved in your food system. And if you want to have a resilient food system, you might want to support the Black community in making sure that we are able to have, you know, a healthy and sustainable food system, because everybody's food security eventually will rest on that. And luckily, we have a lot of smart progressive farmers who understand that very well. And they know very, very well that many peoples of African descent have been the difference between them being able to be, you know, effectively harvest and plant, et cetera, or not. So we already have a bit of an alliance and a relationship with people who are farming. And that's another thing, like, building those connections is really key. So I feel like if we can bring some people out to Malvern, if we can bring some people out to Black Creek, bring some people out to Downsview, people get their hands in the dirt, start understanding the process, learning what it requires. These are things that will help to build people's commitment and their understanding of why we need to have this ongoing solidarity. And it can't just be flash in the pan either. It doesn't have to be your whole life. Maybe people have jobs and everything else, but even if you spend 5 hours a week or 10 hours a month, those that could put in more time and energy, and whether it's working with your hands or working with your mind or using your mouth, everybody has different skills and strengths, and we need all of that, right? So
Sure.
that's a big part of it.
I was just gonna say, Auntie Joe, what you're talking about, Jalil, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna share what you put in the chat there, because it goes exactly what you were saying. He said, we're hoping to set up whiteboards at fridge locations and hopes to resource suggestions from community members that access the fridges, especially in culturally diverse neighborhoods like Parkdale, Girard, and the Pape area. We would also love to work with farmers interested in providing food to the fridges, and hopefully we can create or promote the dialogue around it. And he said this is all very inspiring, and he loves what you are doing. Well, not only you, but everybody as a whole.
I love this whiteboard idea too. I think that's something a lot of us can be doing, because I think it's a whiteboard, and then I feel too like maybe we can work with Black Food Network and try to figure out a way to have a sort of forum, a regular way of connecting and dialoguing. Maybe we could support that with you, Zakiya, because I feel like, I talk to people separately in different parts of the city or different parts of the country, and the more we can collectivize and have, forums where we're all present and hear each other, I think the better, because otherwise I just feel like, like a telephone, and sometimes it could be a broken telephone. Like, I don't know if Black Farmers Collective still has that land in Milton, like there's things that, we all need to be more able to communicate. And I wanted to mention, we have right now a PR person who I think we can continue to work with at fairly low cost, who's done a great job with us. And we also now have a lawyer, because one of the things I decided was I'm not dealing with these government people without a lawyer anymore, because of the things that we've gone through trying to fight for St. Jamestown. So I just want people to know that we've been very blessed to be joined by a human rights lawyer who knows the city very well. And I think some of these resources we can share collectively together to strengthen ourselves.
Definitely. And I'm just gonna read the rest of what's in the chat and stuff like that. Jalil, Yasmin was agreeing with you. She said the whiteboard is a great idea. She said definitely look into the Eco Just Food Network to connect with our urban rural farming mutual network. So you already know. And Susanna also mentioned there's a list of where.
What is there?
It is, sorry about that. Oh yeah, Zakiya, go ahead. Put your hand up real quick.
Actually, I was just going to respond to the same one you were just going to ask there from Susanna.
Take it away.
Directory. Not to my knowledge, we have started developing one. So 2 years ago, we started developing one that just focused on who are like actors in the city doing the work. Right now, we're working on developing a bunch of different lists. So, who are folks who are doing the work, who are providing resources. So, there's a lot of people who are, they're doing catering, they're providing meal kits, they're doing meal programs. We're working on developing a list of Black-owned food businesses. So whether it's be restaurants, grocery stores, or various types of business, whatever are related around food. But the big challenge is that it takes time. Online things don't always get updated. So we've got to, once we find things online, we still have to call, get that information, get it updated, and then do all the back-end technical programming side of it. So we're actually working on developing a system where probably within the next month or two on the Black Food Toronto website, you'll be able to go in and like put in your postal code, and you'll be able to actually see what businesses around you or within that postal code exist and what can be done. And again, a lot of it's that advocacy at that political level. There's millions and billions of dollars being put out right now because of COVID, but it's the challenge is figuring out how do we tap into it and how do we make the case. So for example, like we've been able to get a lot of money to be able to buy food, to provide food to people, but we struggle to find funding to pay our staff. We struggle to find funding to be able to do proper marketing. We struggle to find funding to be able to hire researchers to do research on specific issues addressing food insecurities and some of the things that we're working on. So I like that there's a lot of conversations happening, you know, like simultaneously, like while I'm on this conversation, my dad's on another Zoom call, you know, similar to this, you know, addressing the issue. So it started many years ago, even before me, and it will continue. But I think now is a time where a lot more folks are coming together collectively, just as folks are on this call. And you know, with the links that I've been sharing, you know, please save those sites. They are a work in progress, but definitely you will be seeing a lot of updates coming to them in terms of what's going on. The most recent one I shared, bfstoronto.ca. That site was developed specifically for the Cultivating Black Food Sovereignty in Toronto conference that we had at the end of last year. What the team has been doing in the back end is actually pulling together all the presentations and video clips from that, and eventually we will be updating that specific website with as much information as we can that took place during the conference. So you'll be able to hear the presentations, see the PowerPoints that were there. And at that conference, you know, we brought in people from all around the world who are addressing Black food sovereignty. So there'll be some cool information there that might inspire you, or at least let you know what's happening. And like I said, the Black Food Toronto local site, we're going to be looking to have as much information on there in terms of what's available, where are different places that you can donate. So definitely, you know, we're doing fundraising, but also other local initiatives that are supporting and raising funds to be able to support their communities. And it's a big issue, you know, like we've been actually getting a lot of flack because we serve Toronto, whereas, you know, we get calls from people in Brampton, Mississauga, Peel, who don't have access to such a program, but need it all the same. You know, we've had people actually apply on our website that are as far away as Windsor and Ottawa because they are facing food challenges, and this is the only site they know of that exists. So they've kind of just reached out saying, hey, you know, like, I know you says Toronto, but is there anything you can do for us? And, you know, communities pulling together can do a lot. We typically don't serve Peel, but we had some young people who last year for Christmas, they raised $13,000 for us to provide over 450 baskets to folks specifically in Mississauga and Brampton. And now they're looking at how they can sustain that. On a community call this week, I learned about a group in Markham, Markham, that's doing similar work and looking at how they can address issues within those communities. So it's good that folks are coming together at that local level and pulling together and seeing how we can all come together at a broader table to advocate collectively. You know, I've been in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years. And, you know, when one organization goes to get funding for something that typically isn't funded, it's a challenge. But when you could pull together and say, look, you know, we have 200 grassroots groups that serve this huge population, it's harder for them to ignore it, you know, and definitely through things like social media, you know, we don't necessarily always need the big news networks to share a story or to get the message out to the masses. We can use that and use forums like this to be able to share ideas, you know, like just on this call alone, I've learned so much, and this is what I do on a daily basis. And there's so much more that I learned just being here today within the last 2 hours.
Thank you, Zakiya. I know we're coming to the end of our formal time, but I did want to say that, you know, our co-op is interested in starting a working group that would allow us to be doing outreach in St. Jamestown, connecting up with the Black Food Network, building up our buying power, getting organized in terms of having a voice for St. Jamestown. So I really hope that some folks will be able to get involved with that, and that we can build that up, because, you know, we need to work together. We need to be in the room. One or two people cannot lead these things within communities. There has to be numbers. We need numbers. We need all hands on deck. We need great minds coming together from many cultures and the like. Because also when we're dealing with diverse cultures of people of African descent, you know, there's no one size fits all. There's no cookie cutter for Black people, just as there's no cookie cutter for any sort of broad community. So, you know, let's get organized as much as we can. And I'm happy to continue this conversation with anybody who'd like to stay on a little longer for a bit. But for sure, that's something that I would like to see moving forward. And I think what we're going to do too is we will be putting links to Black Food Toronto and other resources like that in our website, and encouraging promotion of that within our social media. And I don't know a lot about how social media works, but I get it that it's really important. And luckily we have some people who do that stuff. So yeah, let's, combine our resources and our energies. And one of these things that has to happen, we raised a number of times here. Sometimes you can get funding for the food, but you can't get funding for the people. We were looking at local food infrastructure funding from the federal government, and they're willing to give you equipment, but no funding for the people. They're interested in, we were saying we need to have equipment for, sustainable farm workers, but they wouldn't allow us to have any money to transport those workers. So what on earth, there's no point, you can't build a system with just one or two components and then have them sit idle because you don't have the other component. So you have funding to retrofit space, but no space to retrofit. These kind of things is ridiculous. And it's going to require our combined political power to call that out and to correct that.
Correct.
The problem is they don't even know what they're doing. They're all in their little silos. There's no Ministry of Food. There's no Department of Food. So they all sit in their little, their little boxes with their little forms, and they don't realize, they don't see how these things interconnect. They don't see how these things have to be combined. They don't see the timing sequences that need to be introduced. There's not much point in getting work for farm, like funding for farm work in the wintertime. It has to be available in May. Like there's just so many problems with this, but we have to be the ones to tell them what to do. Let us not forget those people work for us. We pay them. They're our employees, and the people we elect are the people we chose to speak for us. So if they're not doing it, make them do it. And by the way, in the St. Jamestown area, we have for the first time ever, a woman of color member of parliament who was born in St. Jamestown. So I would suggest that we use that as our strength and talk to her and get her on our side and get her talking to the federal government about making sure that all this billions of dollars of food funding isn't being wasted on corporate food systems and food banks, but actually helps us to build a resilient food system. And let's be a loud voice in that fight and struggle.
Well said.
Thank you, Auntie Joe. And I just want to say, like around this time, this will be the end of the meeting. So everybody, thank you for joining. But also too, if you would like to stay on the call and chat a little bit more and network and share resources through the chat as everyone's been doing, you guys are welcome to do that. I think everybody is great to meet you guys, and for all the good work that you guys are doing. I'm looking very forward to being a part of these conversations and learning a lot more. And yeah, just big up to everybody for being a part of this and sharing their ideas, the services that they're doing, and mainly just like giving back to the people, you know what I mean? So salute to everybody. It was nice to meet y'all, and you already know.
Thanks so much, Marley. You did a great job. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Hosting.
As I told you, Josephine, I'll definitely be a part of the working group. So I'll be on, but my video might be off a little while. But I'll be listening.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, Naveen. So I think, I don't know, I don't want to keep people for too long, but I do feel like there are some concrete things we can do to move forward. So, if you want to get in touch with us because you'd like to be part of our St. Jamestown working group, you can email the co-op. If you want to support Black Food Network and African Food Basket, please do get in touch with them, help get more support for them to be doing their work. And I think, Eco Just Food Network is a new thing. It's emerging. It's not all set up. There's no staff, whatever, but we've done, I think, a good job in setting up the building blocks of a good network. It's not designed to be an organization. It's designed to be a connecting point. So, folks like Dimitri, people in Parkdale, like if we can all plug in a map of who we are and what we're doing so that we can connect with each other and, get the food from here to there and the labor from there to here and stuff like that, I think it would be really, really helpful. And as Susanna pointed out, I think it's critical for us to understand that cooperatives are a very, very important model for us if we're going to have food sovereignty, because it is the most democratic and sovereign form of organization. It's very familiar to lots of people from the global south. They're the most enduring business models. They are, they allow us to have autonomy. And we can work then with credit unions, and that gets us out of the banking system. So essentially, if we get involved in the cooperative movement and we work from a cooperative legal model, we give ourselves autonomy and sovereignty in a way that nothing else really can from the corporate domination system. So I think that's really, really important. And local farm and food co-op is a crucial resource. They have membership of almost all the farm and food co-ops in Ontario. They've got lots of resources for helping people figure out how to go from a nonprofit to a co-op, how to go from a regular small farm to a co-op farm, how to turn a big corporate farm into a co-op farm, which is a big challenge. But they have like partnership with the Fair Finance Fund and credit unions and the like. So if people want to have that ability to purchase land that Aziki was talking about, so that we can have our own land, even in the GTA region, as well as down home in the Caribbean, these are the partners that I think we need in order to help us to do that, because there's not a lot of us who personally have the wealth to go and get farmland close by when they're trying to sell it for millions so that developers will pay for it, right? So if we're going to pool our power, let's use a co-op model to do that. I just wanted to really emphasize that that's been really important for us here in St. Jamestown and a lot of our partners outside of Toronto.
Thanks for saying that, Josephine. I was going to actually speak on that because land is very important. And I wanted to find out how best we could get the community to rally behind us. How best can we get the community to rally behind us to let them understand that this is for them?
So I've got to run, but I just want to actually share my 2 cents on that question, Ezekiel. And it's been mentioned a couple of times earlier. I think education is the biggest part. Letting people understand the issues in their own way, and being able to share it amongst their own individual networks. Not everybody, for example, could jump on a call like this today, but if everybody who was on this call today went and shared this information with 5 people, and those 5 people shared it with 5 people, within a week, so much people would know. So whatever you do get, share it. And, we're going to be doing a lot to see how we can spread a lot of messaging online and have those conversations. Like even this, typically this is not a form that I would jump into, but I really enjoyed this conversation. Like if this was something that was happening on a monthly basis, I would definitely make the time. So I say education is really important. And make it personal, like talking to a youth versus talking to an adult is different. The issues a seniors face and the issues, a 16-year-old face is different. But definitely, try to engage people as much as possible. And young people, don't shy away from engaging them in these conversations. They're the future. Whatever we do now is going to benefit them, and whatever we don't do now is going to impact them. So, taking that kind of approach of letting them know. As I said, I've lived my whole life around this work. And, as a result, I'm vegan. I garden in my parents' backyard in the summer. My daughter, she's 16 years old. She does the same thing as well. So, what you can expose people to will definitely go a long way. And be patient with some folks because it may take them some time to really understand and grasp it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Zakaya. I should mention we do have a little community garden in spite of the lack of land space. The TCHC house I live in has quite a large yard, and we've been able to make an agreement with the downstairs neighbors so we can make it a community garden. So we can certainly start growing callaloo and experimenting with the things we want to eat, see how we can grow them here. And we're wanting to make a little greenhouse in there as well until we get, the big facilities that we're trying to get the investment in. So yeah, I would encourage people to consider being a part of that community garden. But what Zakaya said is very important. I think having regular conversations would be really helpful, because then as people get curious and they want to find out and they want to ask questions, maybe that's something a St. Jamestown Black Food Working Group could do, is hold a workshop, every so often, advertise it, do some in the evening, some in the weekend. Maybe Marley can help us do one with youth. I know there's a bunch of seniors of African descent who I'm sure would love to be part of a discussion, but aren't necessarily comfortable online. How would we do that? I don't know. Maybe the youth could help with that. So these are things I think I would love for us to focus on and think through. And I commit to being to getting that organized and started so that we can start making some progress. So that would be, to answer your question, Ezeki, I don't have all the answers, but I sure would like to start working on it. So I guess you and me and some others in the neighborhood will hopefully be able to get this moving. Yeah, Marley and my son do a lot of music together, and I'm just, it's a thing that makes me happy in life as well.
You already know, Auntie Joe. But
And
yeah,
so
no.
he calls me Auntie Joe is because my son is a very close friend and
Yes.
collaborator. So
yeah, I was gonna dip, but I left a little message there in the chat. I really appreciate this conversation and meeting all y'all, and I'm looking forward to being a part of more stuff like this and learning a lot more. I learned a lot today, so shout out to all you guys doing the work, and hope you guys have a good weekend.
Thank you, Marley.
No problem. Peace out. Later.
Jaleel, I noticed, Jaleel, are you a person from St. Jamestown?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay.
I live around like Bathurst area, kind of mid Chinatown, Dundas West area. But started the community fridge program 6 months ago in I guess it's called the Junction Triangle. Oh, sorry, like College and Dufferin, and then Parkdale. But we want to move out east and into other communities. We were in Regent Park, but the fridge got taken inside.
Okay.
The landlord wasn't interested in it anymore. So our focus is around 24/7 access, and it's very important to us that the fridges are outside and have a judgment-free access to anybody that wishes to take food. So that was another challenge. So we are trying to continue to open in neighborhoods that have a special need for them, especially, but we don't want to get too much trouble with the city, so we do have to kind of tread a little lightly. But we heard about this panel, and we've been talking about how outside of food insecurity, but mostly focusing on mutual aid and how we could use our program to talk about anti-racism and Black food sovereignty and stuff like that, and using the platform as well for talking about these larger issues that are all interconnected, and working with other organizations and movements to talk to them as well. So thank you so much for hosting this, by the way. We really
thanks for joining us. It's really, really great to have you. I think the really important thing you bring into the conversation is this concept of mutual aid, which has been growing very quickly during the pandemic. And I think it's really important now for people to wake up and realize we don't need to sit around and wait for the government to suddenly wake up. First of all, we need to tell them what to do, not wait for them. And secondly, we can be doing a lot for and with each other in the meantime. And we can use what we say in the Emergency Food Forum and why we started the Eco-Just Food Network was we said, you know what, let's just walk our talk. Let's do action on the ground to drive policy. So rather than waiting around, we'll get it started. So we've already gone out to some local farms. We've already done some planting, some harvesting. We brought the food back to the community. We brought the food to the land back camp at Dawes Road, Wakawasin. We've been connecting with them so that we can start making links between Indigenous people and people of African descent around land care, land sovereignty, food sovereignty. They're all interconnected. And that's actually one of the things, Ezeki, that we didn't talk about much, but that is a very important part, is that, there's land all around GTA that was never ceded, that actually still belongs to the Indigenous people. And we need to be working with them on making sure that we can support and be in solidarity and allyship or accomplices with them in starting to learn how Indigenous people grew food in the forest, how the ravines producing food. These are things we can all do, acting together. And we don't need any government approval or whatever to do that. What we need is to be working in respect of and alongside the Indigenous folks. That's the kind of relationship that can really get us to be more sustainable and resilient. I know Indigenous people who actually hunt, fish, and farm in our ravine systems. and on Toronto Island. We just never see them, but they're there. They know what to do. So, you know, I'm not, you know, it's illegal to eat geese, but whatever. They have the right to do that. And they know when the fish are coming down. They know, you know, they know things that we just will never know if we don't work with them. You need to know too that Toronto used to be a gathering meeting place for Indigenous peoples for millennia. In fact, there are maps carved into stone as far south as Central America, pointing the way to this region, to this area for people in need or people in crisis. And that's incredibly important. This is like a traditional meeting place of many different kinds of peoples. So we've just brought that into the 21st century. Now we need to root it back again into that history and understand that this place was here to help people when they came short of food, faced famines or whatever. And they used to store extra food here, a lot of extra food here. And they used to grow a lot of food here for that very reason. So I feel like we need to get back to that and understand that that's part of our role and our purpose. We have some of the best farmland in Ontario, I mean, in Canada, and it's all being paved over a mile a minute. The Ford government's trying to build another highway through what's left of our farmland. We have to stop this, because if we think we can rely on importing food from around the world the way things are now, that's crazy. You see California's burning up. That was one of our main bread baskets. You see Mexico is having droughts and all kinds of problems. That's where a lot of our food comes from in the winter. We cannot rely on these places. They're going to need their food for their own people. They're going to have a hard enough time getting their own food. So we have to get smart and start growing way, way more food and work with the people who have like farms at home, like in the Caribbean, so that we have secure access to tropical produce instead of this, you know, ridiculous idea that we can truck tomatoes 1,000 miles and turn them into styrofoam. I don't know. Those things are horrible. Anyway, I'm babbling, but I really wanted to get
I will take 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Sorry, something.
Poonam?
Yes, I was just trying. Sorry, she can talk before me. That's fine. But if she wants to, then I can bring the issue for 1 minute.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Poonam.
Okay, thank you. I have a suggestion here. Like there is a lot of communities, like from I don't use the word black, but the people from African origin, different countries like Ethiopia, Sudan, and other country. People live with the pride and they don't come forward. You know, if they need, they're very shy. And even they need, and then what happens them, they don't know, they don't have much knowledge, and they have language barrier. Jamaican people are very systematic, well spoken, and they know how to do things right. And maybe they come forward as a leadership to tell or teach them as well, you know, what's good, because they come before. And from Africa, the people, they are too shy to ask, you know, and they don't have the proper food, and then they are getting sick. So there should be some co-op stores. Like I have seen some countries, they have co-op stores, like you have a co-op housing, so they can buy their own community foods for cheaper. Like you might think about that, that you have a buying program. So if the government allows or makes some funding, so co-op stores would be a good idea if you think so. That's what my point is.
Great idea. Great idea. And I would like to back up what you have said. That's a fact. The Africans, especially from East Africa, they do not converse a lot with their diasporic brothers from the Caribbean. So you're quite right. And I think us as Jamaicans or people from the Caribbean, I think we have a job or a duty to actually represent them, even without the understanding that we are representing them, because they are suffering. And it has a lot to do with the fact that they really don't understand what is happening around them. They really don't reach out, and they they only share amongst their own brothers and sisters. And because of that, they cut themselves off from information, even in the school system, because I have children in the school system and they are friends from East Africa. And my daughter has to be the one actually helping her with her schoolwork in terms of even ESL. Now with even Corona going on, a lot of children are falling through the cracks because the educational system is not able to even keep up with children that need special programs.
Yeah.
And it, along with the food, it's a great impact on them also, because they, more than anyone else, they stick to a particular way of eating. They don't digress that much. And yes, we really need to do a lot more in terms of outreach with our East African brothers. That's a fact.
You just gave me an idea, Ezeki. I know that Poonam, I know we want to have a co-op store, but we don't have any space. Right now, the Bulk Food Buying Club is that same opportunity. But from what Ezeki was just saying, I realized that the current principal of Rose Avenue is a pretty good guy. And I think Rose Avenue School would be a great way to reach these folks who are newcomers, who are more shy. It's a great way to reach people with language barriers because we can get things translated for them. And perhaps that's how we could start getting in contact with some of these isolated families and getting them involved in our food buying club, where they can tell us the kind of things that they need us to be able to find and source. And then we can talk to, you know, Zakaya and FoodShare about how and where we can get those foods for them. That's, I think, one way to go about it is going through the schools themselves to reach a lot of these folks. We actually did that back in the day when we did a human rights report on St. Jamestown. And when we reached through the school, we got a lot of people involved that way. So that was a great point. Thank you so much, Poonam and Ezeki, for bringing that up. And I think that's going to be, you know, a part of our work as we get this working group going. And that's a very important way to proceed. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go kind of shortly because I'm actually really hungry. I was stuck at food and I had no breakfast, and he just brought me food, and I've been looking at my food for the last, you know, hour, going, oh, I'm so hungry.
Talking about food for the last
Okay.
hour as well.
Right. So, but thank you everybody so much for attending, and I hope we can keep moving forward with this solidarity and in the community as well. So yeah, this is blessed. This is really blessed. And I'm so excited that, you know, there's interest in people want to do stuff and some of the great ideas that came forward. So I'm just going to start eating and put myself on mute. And if anybody.
Thank you so much for hosting this. I'm going to head out, but this was really inspiring and I learned a lot as well. And it's really amazing to see everybody doing all the great work they are. And we'd love to keep working together and keep the mutual aid spirit alive, you know.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Later, bye.
Bye.